Okay, Prenel Dark, I say, good afternoon. Welcome to the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Full Council meeting on Wednesday, the 5th of January 2022. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast by the authority's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. Before we get into the meeting proper, sadly, on the 26th of December 2021, Archbishop Desmond Tutu passed away. He was a tireless campaigner against injustice and inequality, and he was made a Freeman of the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council in 1984. He was awarded in 1986. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984. I'd like to observe a minute's silence in his memory, please. Okay, thank you, everybody. So first item on the agenda, item number 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as you may have heard during the discussion before we started the meeting proper, we have apologies from Councillor Kevin Gibbs and from Councillor Harvey Jones.
Okay, thank you. And declarations of interest.
I haven't been notified of any, Mr. Mayor.
Right, there are no declarations of interest. Items 3 and 4, unfortunately, have been deferred due to illness amongst the staff. So I wish them a speedy recovery, and hopefully we'll be able to have the presentation at a future date. Which brings us on then to item number 5, minutes of the previous meetings, items 5A to 5L. So would someone like to move those for accuracy, please?
Yes, I'd like to move those, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
you.
And
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So any comments on the minutes or any questions on the minutes? No, so I'll hand you over to Karis and we'll do a vote on that.
Thank you. So as usual, members, can I ask you for any abstentions? Please could you show now? Thank you. Anybody voting against, please show now. Thank you. Those voting in favour, please show now. That's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if my vote was registering there. It's not showing on my screen, but I was in favour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make sure that we show whether you've voted in the next matter.
Thank you. Next item number 6, adoption of council tax reduction scheme for the financial year 2022 to 2023, and that's Councillor Chris Davis, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Blwyddyn newydd dda chi gyd. Anyway, Happy New Year to everybody. This will be a report, members, that you will be pretty familiar with because it's one that comes forward to council on an annual basis. But the summary of the report then is contained at 1.1 to 1.2, and members are obviously being asked to consider the adoption of the council tax reduction scheme for the financial year 2021-2022, or in our case 2022-2023. Members will note, obviously, it's a requirement of council to attempt to adopt this scheme before the 31st of January, obviously of the preceding financial year, notwithstanding the requirements set out in the Welsh Government legislation, that this will be a default scheme that will come into effect in any case or any which way. As members will note, section 3 of the report in the background sets out the regulations laid down in the Local Government Finance Act and subsequent legislation following the introduction of the National Assembly for Wales. It's interesting, members, that 3.2 sets out the additional discretionary elements that are open and eligible to councils to consider, and they are indicated in the 3 bullet points preceding 3.2. Obviously, the financial implications are set out in section 4 of the report, and as it is said, the council tax reduction scheme funding is included in the revenue settlement, but doesn't cover the full costs of the scheme, and it's possible that any changes to future regulations could increase the cost of the scheme, and I would say that that any additional costs that may be incurred by this council will be brought back and reported to council. So the recommendation simply then, Mr Mayor, are contained at section 2.1 of the report, and that's the adoption of a council tax reduction scheme to commence in April 2022 under the requirements of the prescribed regulations for the 2022-2023 financial year be approved, and subject to questions and comments from members, Mr Mayor, I so move.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please?
Yes, I second that, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Are there any questions? Councillor Andrew Barry, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I know within the settlement we had 5.6 million towards the council tax reduction scheme. Can either Steve or Mike, if he's here, give us some indication of how much the shortfall is from that settlement?
Yes, if I could answer that one, Mr Mayor. Just looking at my notes, 1 second. Our current shortfall, we're around £1.4 million short. So that's the additional monies we have to include within our budget for next year. So it's just over 1.4 million.
Lovely, thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, no one is indicating. Are there any comments? No, there are no comments, so I'll hand you back over to Caris then, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, usual procedure then, can I ask if anybody wishes to abstain on this item, please could you show now? Thank you. Anybody wishing to vote against the recommendation, please show now. Thank you. Those voting in favour of the recommendation, please show now. I'm just taking this a little bit slowly because I think we are having some delay in some people's votes registering. So at the moment I've got 28 votes registered.
Has mine registered, Gareth?
Yours had, Councillor Amos, but it's gone now. So if you
Right.
just...
There seems to be an update on the Teams.
Yes, I think that's part of it. Right, so I have Councillor Amos, your hand has been showing, so I think we've recorded that you have voted, and that was the only one that was then missing. So that is carried then, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So if we could lower our hands then, please.
And now, Councillor Amos, your hand is showing as being raised. There we are. That's better.
I mean, I'm just pressing this and it's doing what it wants to do, you know.
It's a delay, and I think we've had this problem before, so we'll just all need to be a little bit patient. Just keep an eye on the symbol and make sure that if it's meant to be raised, it's raised, and if it's not, just give it a little bit of time. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, all hands down now, thank you. So we move on to item number 7, which is Welsh Language Strategy and Welsh in Education Strategic Plan. And this is Councillor Lisa Mitten, please.
Yeah, diolch Emyr Mair. Thank you, Mr Mayor. The summary of the report set out in 1.1, the Welsh Language Strategy, commonly known as the WLS, and the Welsh in Education Strategic Plan, the WESP, are statutory plans for every local authority in Wales. The WLS is a 5-year plan and will run from July 2022 to June 2027, and the WESP is a 10-year plan and will run from September 2022 to August 2032. Both plans have similar ambitions, and at 1.4, the overarching vision for the Welsh language in Merthyr Tydfil is Merthyr Tydfil Siameirament, a county borough where the Welsh language is heard, spoken and celebrated through all walks of life. At 1.5, both plans needed statutory consultation, and a range of events were planned to allow as wide a range of people as possible to have their say over the ambitions contained within these plans. At 1.6, the ambitions of each plan are interlinked, although there are few discrete differences. And the recommendations set out in 2.1 are the submission of the Welsh in Education Strategic Plan and Action Plan to Welsh Government be approved, and 2.2, the further development of the Welsh Language Strategy and Action Plan for the Welsh Commissioner be approved, and so I move.
Thank you. A seconder, please.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm delighted to second the recommendations put forward by the leader.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, and I believe Councillor Clive Jones has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I have more than one. Let me start off on page 64 and the paragraph 5, the financial implications. There's 3 dots there. It says there is no specific budget within education for the delivery of the WESP. The new role, Strategic Officer for Welsh Language, will coordinate the activity. And the third one says the external funding will be sought to support the marketing of these plans. So can I ask any particular reason why there's no specific budget for this? And where will the external funding come from?
Shall I take that one, Mr Mayor, if you don't mind? There's never been a budget for Welsh language within education. As you know, Council agreed to actually have an education officer. Since this has been written, there is a small budget that has been approved that has actually gone into that for £10,000. But the WESP traditionally has not had a budget attached to it. It's not a budget driven. It is an action driven strategy. There is budget if we're looking at doing capital works to schools, that will sit outside, but that comes under the capital funding as opposed to a specific Welsh language funding. When it comes to the external funding, we are looking for lottery funding at the moment, but it is very much a partnership plan, and we're looking at how we can work with partners and maximise where they can actually access grants to support the Welsh language and actually deliver on the ambitions of this plan together.
Right, okay, thank you. Mr Mayor, I'm now on page 67, and in the middle of that page and the public consultation responses, I note there's a total of 41 responses were received. Could I clarify the responses from these individuals? Were they all from within the county borough? And for example, were they all responsive aged over 16? And were any of the responses anonymous?
Right. So what page? Sorry, Councillor Jones. What page are you on?
67, Appendix 1.
Right. If we're actually looking at the responses there, those were from the public consultation responses that we actually undertook as part of this. We did a number of consultation in community centres around the county borough. And those were all with adults. And we also did, as part of the Diwrnod Siamai events that took place in October, on Saturday and Sunday in October, we actually had information from members of the public there. As part of this process, though, there have had to be statutory consultation as well. So we've had statutory responses from Estyn, from Mentor Iaith, and they would actually sit outside, obviously, the county borough. Mentor Iaith actually sits within the county borough, but there are statutory responses that we've had to receive from outside the county borough as well.
So I take it the potential for consulting with many thousands live in the county borough. Were you disappointed that we only had 41 responses?
More than we had last time, Councillor Jones. So I think in that respect we were quite pleased, and we did have. I think there was only one community event where we didn't have anybody turn up at all. So I know Angharad Jones was on the call as well. We had a number of events where we had good discussion, and we've taken a lot of what those members of the public said into the action plan, and we will continue to use a number of those moving forward as part of our sort of community steering group in what we're actually doing with the Welsh language, because they were very keen to see this develop further.
Right, I've got another question on page 67, and it's below the question 2 there. It says, first sentence, the remaining questions were free text answers. Can you explain to me exactly what that is and how was that conducted? Because when you read the rest of it, question 3, 4, 5 and 6, there are 34 summarized answers. So where were these obtained from? Again, was it all from anyone residing in the county borough of Merthyr Tydfil? And if not, if it was outside Merthyr Tydfil, where did they come from?
Right, all those answers have come from the questionnaire results, which were from the consultation events that we actually undertook in Merthyr. So you'd have simple yes, there were simple yes, no answers, and then there was the opportunity for members of the public to say what they wanted. So if you got the question 3 was, what activities would you like to see to support the Welsh language strategy in the West? Well, you can't have a yes, no answer for that. They had the opportunity to write what sort of things they wanted. So that's a summary. A lot of people put more extracurricular and after school clubs delivered through the medium of Welsh. So that's a summary of what the free text answers we had under those questions in the responses, in those public questionnaire responses that we had back.
So clearly there were more than 41 people replying under these text systems, is that right?
No, they would have all come from the 41. They're
right.
An amalgam of what's come from the 41, Councillor Jones.
Right, okay, thank you for that. That clarifies that. On question 5, I'm on page 68 now. The 10th dot down on page 68 refers, and I quote, it should be mandatory that all teachers in Wales have at least level 2. Can I ask, were all the teaching unions in Merthyr Tydfil asked that particular question as part of the consultation?
They were asked the question. Whether they responded, Councillor Jones, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But yes, they were. That's come from the public, from those public questionnaires.
Well, that leads me on to page 70, and halfway down the page, under the heading Unison, the main trade union represents staff working in schools in Merthyr Tydfil. Did you have any other replies from the other trade unions that represent staff in schools? GMB, Unite, all the teaching unions, they were asked, but none of them. They were asked,
but they didn't respond, no.
Right, so they were given an opportunity. And then it refers to the fact under that heading number 1, Unison does not agree that all staff should be required to attain level 2 as a minimum standard. And it goes on to say level 1 should be sufficient as the Welsh language is notoriously difficult to learn, and we think this is a big ask for members of staff to meet this criteria. Do you agree with the points that have been made by Unison on behalf of their members in relation to level 2?
As part of this strategy and as part of the West, we are ensuring that we are supporting the Welsh Government ambition of 1 million speakers by 2050. And that's what we have to work to, and that's what we'll actually be challenged to work towards when we actually send this in, when the West goes into Welsh Government, and when the Welsh language strategy goes into the Commissioner for approval. Now, whether level 2, the basic level that we actually have in Merthyr is the basic level. It isn't the full level 1 course, it is a basic level. So if we look at level 2 is an ambition. We're not saying it's an expectation for all staff, it is an ambition. We're a Welsh local authority working in Wales. We do attract a lot of people from across the border, but it is an ambition that we actually want people to undertake level 2 and to be at level 2 by the end of the lifetime of this plan, which is 5 years. If we don't meet that ambition, we don't meet that ambition, but it is this is what we are aiming to do, because we want to support the Welsh Government's target, and we want to be able to meet that target as best we can.
Thank you. And it also says, under the same heading referred to by Unison, that it says they requesting to ensure Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council and businesses in Merthyr Tydfil advertise increasing numbers of posts where Welsh is desirable for the job and the workforce is seen as bilingual organisation. In one of the strategies there, it actually refers to as well about Welsh being essential. Don't we have to take this in a steady way, particularly in view of the fact that at the moment 92%, the figures may be out of date a little bit from the last census and the estimated figure for 2020, but shouldn't we be taking this step by step? If you want people to start to learn, you have to attempt to encourage, and I understand, I haven't unfortunately learned it myself, but from other adults I've spoken to who've taken time to be taught it, it's not an easy language to learn.
I agree we need to take it step by step. We do, as a county council, we have to adhere to the Welsh language standards, and we are subject to fines by the Welsh Commissioner if we don't adhere to those standards. So the number of jobs will need to be essential Welsh-speaking, Welsh language jobs. A number of all jobs that we put out are desirable, and we have a number of discussions at CMT to say whether the job is essential to be Welsh speaking, and that will depend on how many people in that department already speak Welsh. So if a member of the public comes through and wishes to actually have the conversation about that particular area through the medium of Welsh, they are able to do it because that is their language of choice. And as a public sector organisation, we need to be able to offer that because we are a Welsh public sector organisation.
And one last question, Mr. Mayor. In view of that answer, you will clearly, if this level 2 is definitely inserted there, you will have applicants for various posts who live across Offa's Dyke, the other side of the border. So are we in a way, if we pushing this hard, in a situation where applicants who would perhaps think of applying for the various professional posts are deciding not to come to Merthyr Tydfil?
What you'll find and what you'll find in other local authorities is that it isn't an expectation to have any qualification before you take up the post. It's an expectation that you actually, within the first 6 months or within the first year or whatever we decide, that you actually undertake training to upskill yourself in the language. So that's your slow and steady as well, Councillor Jones, because you're just encouraging people to get to know the language and to be able to understand basic language, and you're developing that as they move forward. It's not an expectation that they have level 2 before they come in, unless of course it's an essential when they've got to be fluent. But you know, if you're looking at a desirable, it's desirable that everybody is willing to undertake training in Welsh to upskill themselves when they come into a job in a local authority. And in that way, we're no different to any other local authority.
So it's not correct then that up till now, that in various posts, level 1 is put in the advert.
It's that basic level that they will do the level 1. It's a 10-hour course that you do online, and then actually it's part of you. It's the part of you as sort of getting started. So that's where we're going at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Brent Carter, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So, 2 very quick questions from myself. In terms of the level 2, which Clive was on about with regards to Welsh, could you just give a brief understanding of what level 2 actually means? And also, if we were to take on staff and they were under the understanding that they would have this step-by-step learning to acquire level 2, if they didn't manage to acquire the level 2, would their positions be then terminated? Thanks.
I don't think.
Questions.
Yeah. I'm hoping that Anne Harrod is on the call, because I can't. I wouldn't want to actually give you the differential in the level 2. The one that we actually do now is very basic, and it is very basic. The one that we actually asking the staff to do now is obviously incremental as we go through. And if we've taken on staff and we've taken them on the expectation that they will continue, that they will undertake the Welsh training, we'll have to take advice then from HR and from legal as to how we actually put that in the job description. We're expecting every member of staff to undertake Welsh training. It doesn't matter, you know, to what level at the moment. That's the expectation. It's what level we put in. We will take advice on how we actually take that forward. But we have to be able to offer that training as well. If we are saying it's an expectation, we have to be able to offer it as well, which goes back to Councillor Jones for a point about funding it as well. So we need to be able to do that. But I'll ask Anne Harrod to explain the difference, or to explain the actual standard for level 2, if you don't mind, Councillor Carter.
No, that would be great. Thanks, sir.
Okay, level 2 under the national framework is level 1, which is entry level, which is Mynediad, and this is delivered by the Learn Welsh Glamorgan University of South Wales course. It's a 60-week course. You can either do 30 weeks, 2 hours a week, or you can do 4 hours a week, which is a 60 weeks. So it's entry 1 for 1 academic year and entry 2 for the 2nd academic year, with an exam at the end. It's a basic course providing you with sentences, providing you names, teaching you the verbs. The current level 1 course, which is mandatory for all external staff, as Sue was mentioned, is free of charge, which is an online 10-hour Welsh work course delivered by the National Learn Welsh Centre based at the University Trinity College, Carmarthen. It's a taster course which provides the opportunities for members of the public to undertake entry level 1 course. You can either do the entry level 1 course in a year, where it's 4 hours a week, that's entry 1 and 2, or you can undertake entry 1 during the 1st academic year, and then entry 2 during the 2nd academic year. And this is where we would work with, I believe, the Learn Welsh Development Officer for Merthyr Tydfil, who's based 4 days a week at Canolfan Zoa and 1 day a week at the University of South Wales.
Thanks, Anarad.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Gareth Lewis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to focus on the provision of a Welsh language medium secondary school within the county borough. On page 98, it states that within the first 5 years, there's a commitment to undertake a feasibility study on setting up a Welsh language secondary school. The following page then goes on to say that by September of this year to consider a possible site. Will that decision be made by full council?
Sorry, I'm just trying to look what page? Sorry, Councillor Lewis.
Sorry, it's on 99. It's the first bullet point on 99. By September of this year is to consider a possible site for the Welsh medium secondary school. Would that be a decision made by full council?
I'm going to go back to a previous meeting where we've been talking about school sites and we've talking about Band C. So obviously this would come into Band C, and once we come into the next administration, we will be coming to council with exempt, because it won't be anything that we'll be able to take publicly, to start that dialogue about what we are looking for in, what school sites we would be looking for in Band C, which would start in the next administration.
Okay, thank you. And one further question. The second bullet point on page 99 states that by April of next year, we'll consider approval for a feasibility study. I don't know, in my opinion, it just seems a bit of a gap between considering a site and then requesting a feasibility study. Can that feasibility study be looked at earlier? Can undertaken be given earlier?
I think we can. We can look at what we can look at the planned the action plan and see. We see what happens. It could be done alongside September 22. I was trying to actually fit it in with the other actions as well. But as with any action plan, it's fluid and it's changeable. And as we move forward, we can look at that in more detail. And certainly look at that, Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Barry's next, please.
Yeah, just a couple of things, Mr. Mayor. Just a typo to start with. Clive Jones, hold your head in shame. You missed this one. Geraint Thomas's forward on page 73, July 22 until June 21. I think that's meant to be 27. I'm horrified that I've spotted that and Clive hasn't, to be honest.
Thank you, Councillor Barry.
What am I doing? Okay, there's a couple of things then. There's a question, Sue, in terms of the presentations we were due to have tonight from the Earth and the possibility of hosting the Earth in 2025, right in the middle of these strategies. I couldn't, and apologies if it is in there, I couldn't find any reference to it. And as the strategies are highly aspirational, I thought there might have been a mention of it.
No, because actually these strategies were written and they went out for consultation before we'd had that invitation. And as we haven't made a decision on that yet, I wasn't going to put it in. Now, one of the things that RAG came back to us about when they presented their response to our questionnaire, to the strategies, was the need to be ambitious and to look at how we can actually get national events. I don't know if they knew something that we didn't know, but that's why it's not in. And that's why I said earlier that the action plan is actually ambitious, is fluid. If we make that decision, because we're hoping that they will come in March to actually look at it, then we will revise this. The Welsh language strategy doesn't have to be published until July. So it would go into any sort of strategy moving forward once the decision has been made in that action plan, and we would bring that back again to council to discuss. Obviously, we'd have to have a lot of negotiation moving forward on that.
Okay, thank you, Sue. And the last point really would be to Ellis, and it relates to Councillor Gareth Lewis's point in terms of where we go forward. Ellis, there's an acceptance with our consultations that these numbers are okay. The potential for the population to be surveyed is thousands and thousands of people. have we got any plans to improve these numbers? Because there are more people in this meeting tonight that have been surveyed for these strategies. Are we looking to improve the consultation process, particularly in the light of what Gareth has mentioned in terms of a new school? You know, if this is all we can muster in terms of the strategies that are 5 and 10 years long, then the problems we've had with consultation to date need to be addressed, and 41, I would suggest, is nowhere near good enough yet again.
Yeah, if I just come back in there. No, thanks, Councillor Barry. Obviously, all we can do is go out and engage with the public best we can. Obviously, we can't make them respond. The attendees of those events are the ones who responded to the consultation. So we do everything we can to drum up engagement from the public on these issues and other consultations. But it's something we are trying to improve every step of the way. As Sue noted in her response, it was better than the last consultation we did on Welsh language. But I agree with you, it's not what we want. It would be far clearer if we had a couple of thousand responses, but that's not where we're at. So we're doing everything we can to improve it, but I agree it's a work in progress at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Al.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barry. Are there any further questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have been trying to put my hand up to ask a question.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, it's not showing on my screen, but Councillor Thomas, please.
Yes, I'm having difficulty with that. It seems to be a system error. It's just more of a point of clarity in respect of should obviously we go ahead with this, and it obviously questions all staff. Is that applicable for elected members as well?
We would ask that elected members undertook Welsh language training, yes.
Thank you. That answers the question. Thanks.
I'm not looking at faces now, though, and I'm going to turn my camera off.
Right, thanks, Councillor Thomas. Are there any other questions? No, no one is indicating. So, are there any comments then, please? Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, consulting for 10 weeks, getting 41 responses throughout the county borough, when there's the potential for several hundred or certainly a few thousand. I'm just absolutely amazed. I know we're in the throes of a pandemic still, but I would have thought that we would have had a lot more answers than that. And in relation to Unison's viewpoint there, I happen to agree when they say Unison does not agree that all staff should be required, and the operative word is required, to attain level 2 as a minimum standard. Level 1 should be sufficient, as the Welsh language is notoriously difficult to learn. And clearly, you know, with 92% who are not fluent Welsh speakers, you know, that is a real issue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Chris Davis, please.
Yeah, diolch Mair. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to speak bilingually. I haven't requested formal translation of the Democratic Services Department because I have the ability to speak both English and in Welsh. Just for those members who worry that they may not understand what I say, I will translate what I say in Welsh into English. But Mr. Mayor, I'd like to commend the aspiration of the council, and particularly commend the vision set out at 2.1 of the council report, that Welsh is heard, spoken and celebrated through all walks of life in Merthyr Tydfil. I think, you know, the Welsh language should be for everybody, for Welsh speakers, for Welsh learners, and those in the county borough that don't speak Welsh. I'm really pleased, you know, for being a former Welsh language champion of this council and being the Welsh language champion at the council when the Shemairament was set about, and the continued success of that piece of work and some of the amazing work that we've done over the last year, engaging children and young people from across the county borough in celebrating and being involved in the continued success of that as an absolute figure stone piece of continuing our Welsh language journey. I think we've done good work in terms of engaging and developing this promotional strategy, notwithstanding what Councillor Jones and other members have said about the lack of response from the public. I attended a number of the consultation events, and we've all got a role to play. For those members on social media, ask ourselves, did we do our bit in terms of promoting and actually on sharing the significant numbers of posts our Welsh language officer has worked significantly hard on social media over the last 12 months. And we should ask ourselves the question, did we play our role and our bit in that? I think the work that's been done with a range of partners developing the strategy should be commended. And dwi jyst eisiau dweud diolch i'r swyddogion y cyngor, a'n enwedig i Angharad Jones, Sir Walker, Andrew Mogford a Matthew Rivers, a mae gwaith nhw i datblygu'r iaith Gymraeg dros y bwdestref, ac hefyd i'r staff yn y sefydliadau dros Merthyr Tydfil sydd wedi helpu ni gwthio y iaith Gymraeg ymlaen. So, Mr Mayor, I'd like to say thank you to officers of the Council, especially to Angharad Jones, Sir Walker, Andrew Mogford and Matthew Rivers for their work in developing the Welsh language across the county borough, and also to the staff in the organisations across Merthyr who've helped us to push forward the Welsh language in the borough. So our current strategy, as the Director of Education has said, is an ambitious one, and I think it maintains the pace of Cymraeg 2050 and the Welsh Government aspirations for reaching 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. And we have a role as a public sector body and a local authority to promote that. Section 4.4 of the report sets out again the aims of the Welsh Government for developing Welsh medium education and the aspirations within the WESP to increase and develop Welsh medium education across Wales, but particularly in Merthyr Tydfil. And just to draw members' attention to page 96 of the Council papers, which is page 12 of our 10-year 2022 to 2032 WESP, our Welsh Education Strategic Plan, which sets out our commitment from childcare to maithrins to primary, and as Councillor Lewis has alluded to, potentially that development of a Welsh medium secondary school for the county borough. Mr Mayor, I think, what is absolutely important is that Welsh language and Welsh medium education is a priority for this administration, and I hope this council. And dwi jyst eisiau dweud da iawn eto I bawb sydd wedi cyfrannu ni gyda'r ei cynllun strategol Cymraeg ac hefyd ei cynllun hyddio iaith Gymraeg. Diolch yn fawr iawn. I just want to say well done to everybody that's contributed to the development of this current Welsh language promotional strategy and our Welsh Education Strategic Plan, which is in front of Council for approval tonight. I think in closing, we've got exciting times ahead, particularly, and it's disappointing that members of the Urdd are not able to join us due to illness tonight, but exciting times for the proposal of the Urdd Eisteddfod to be hosted in Merthyr Tydfil potentially in 2025. Mr Mayor, diolch yn fawr I chi a pawb yn gwrando I fi. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davies. So we go from the former Welsh language champion to the current Welsh language champion. Councillor Geraint Thomas, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Mayor. Can I just echo Councillor Davies's praise for our Welsh language officers, Angharad Jones, Matthew Rivers, Andrew Mogford, Sue Walker, for bringing this report tonight. It is ambitious, and it is aspirational. It was disappointing, like Councillor Barry said, about how many people took part in the consultation. When you think there's almost 1,000 children now in Welsh education through the Cylch Maithrin, right through our primary settings and into Read a Wine. We have 450 children travelling to Read a Wine. And I think it's important that when we discuss the siting of a new school coming forward, during these times of climate change, that we want to bring the school closer to people, so children can walk to school as well. Because the cost of busing our children at the moment out of the borough is expensive, And again, you know, it is a journey by a diesel vehicle. And I think these are the considerations we must consider going forward. But I fully support the Welsh Government's 1 million speakers by 2050. When we all go to our schools now, if we govern as a schools, we all hear the Welsh language being spoken naturally by the young children coming through. And I've been fortunate enough now to go to Penydre on a couple of occasions where the children have performed so well in the Eisteddfods, the National Eisteddfod and the Regional Eisteddfods as well. And I think they should be applauded. You know, the bilingual work going on at Penydre is fantastic. It is really, really good. And look forward to the future and welcome, hopefully, the year coming in 2025 as well. So, yeah, great. Thank you very much. Don't have out, Bob.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor David Isaacs, next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a former governor of Ysgol Sant Ystadfil, I'm glad to see this council promoting, supporting and promoting the Welsh language, as I'm very dismayed at seeing media reports of another Welsh council attempting to take the Welsh language off its road signs, street signs, and promote the English language in their borough instead of Welsh. I think that council should hang its head in shame and take a look at what we are trying to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Councillor Kevin O'Neill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly commend the approach. It was a part of our original independent manifesto to improve the use of the Welsh language, and the Shemaim event has been an aspect of that throughout. And I know it's something that Councillor Geraint Thomas is passionate about, and he really drives it from his position. I did Welsh training as a police officer, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't finish as the Mudiad. But I will concur with Councillor Jones. It's a very difficult language, especially when you get the dreaded mutations. I, like others, are concerned about the amount of consultation has gone on, but I don't believe it. I strongly believe that we've got a good comms team who work really hard. I just wonder whether the framework of the consultation is right. We keep coming back to this conversation about having to reach out and work so hard and asking our elected members to do more within their communities. Now, where we are successful with consultation is our budget consultation and the model that we do for that one. It's just a thought. At the moment, we do a budget consultation, but we also on the back of it have a conversation about the council tax. It may be useful in the future to have another question when we do that consultation about people's feelings about the Welsh language. Because the budget consultation, reaching out in places like Tesco's, a couple of weeks ago we did it in the college, is very successful. And we engage at a really useful way with lots of our community. So it's just a comment, 100% supportive, well done to all those involved. We've got to work hard at it. It's not going to come to us. We've got to get out there, but also maybe getting that model to fit in better with where we got a successful consultation, and supporting our comms team to do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. No one else indicating for a comment? No, I'd just like to say, picking up on Councillor Scott Thomas's point about councillors learning Welsh, I fully admit that my Welsh isn't good enough and it needs work, and it's something that I will try and improve on throughout my coming years. So, yes, I think Scott made a good point there. And also, I'm fully in support of this strategy. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and we need to be encouraging more people to use Welsh on a daily basis. But Councillor Thomas has managed to raise his hand now.
Yes, finally started working for me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking note of my query, and obviously in respect of that, and I do appreciate the fact that you've taken time to learn any severance of Welsh and effective. And obviously put it well across as well. I just want to sort of touch on a point that Councillor Clive Jones made when he suggested that the Welsh language is extremely difficult to learn. Fortunately for councillors like myself, Councillor Chris Davis, Geraint Thomas and Councillor Ernie Goldsworthy, we have had the passion of learning Welsh and being involved in that language. It is, in fact, one of the very hardest languages to learn in Europe. It takes over 1,000 hours to actually be able to fully comprehend Welsh as a language, and that's actually twice as much as French. It actually falls into the category where it's more difficult to learn than Swahili. So for members to just take that on board, it is extremely difficult to learn, and I'm very, very proud of this and very, very passionate about this going forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Are there any other comments? No, so I'll hand you over to Karis then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So can I ask all of those who wish to abstain on this item, can you please show now? Thank you. Can I ask all those who wish to vote against the recommendation, please show now? Thank you. Can I ask all those wishing to vote in favour, please show now? I think I'm short of one vote, and I don't want to conclude things. If
I think it's my hand to stop working now. Clive Tuvey here.
Right. So, can you tell us what you're voting, Councillor Tuvey?
Oh, I'm voting for. Yes.
Thank you. We'll just make sure that that's recorded, and in fact, it is now showing on the count. So, thank you, everybody, Mr. Mayor. That is carried.
Thank you very much. If we could all lower our hands then, please.
I think, Mr. Mayor, it's actually quite difficult to make sure everybody has lowered their hand. There we are.
Yeah, they've all cleared now, thank you. Items 8, 9 and 10 are all information reports. Item 11, to receive communications from His Worship the Mayor. I had some IT difficulties earlier in the meeting. I did wish to say at the start of the meeting, wish you all a happy new year and hope it's better than the last 2 years have been. So fingers crossed for that, and maybe one day we'll get back in the chamber before the next election. I certainly hope so. Item 12, to deal with any other urgent business or correspondence. There is none. So that concludes the meeting. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you and good night.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor.